What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Jesse Hughes Show. We've got a lot to discuss tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's going to be one heck of a night. 2026 can be described as the year of the Patriot. This is the year for Patriots. This is our year. We've never been more back than we are right now. And part of that was on display on the White House lawn for the UFC America Freedom 250 fight that happened on Sunday. Now, you had a lot of people leading up to this event saying it wasn't going to be well attended, that it was going to be a complete flop, it was going to be a failure. The weather is going to ruin this event. The weather is going to come in and disrupt this. It's going to be a complete and total disaster. Trump is going to be embarrassed. And we saw the exact opposite happen. Just mere hours before the event, the rain cleared up. And then as the event was going on, a storm front that was supposed to come in, that was supposed to rain out and drown out the event, splits over Washington, D.C. Just completely splits. Now, I've heard some people use this term before. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about it, but you could argue that Donald Trump has the mandate from heaven. You could argue that, because how in the world does this storm that's barreling, coming right for DC, that everybody on the left is hoping will disrupt and change this event and keep Donald Trump from having a good time, how does it just magically split right before it gets to DC? I'm not saying that God has favorites, but I am saying that we've seen a number of blessings, probably more than we deserve in this country, happen over the past few years. And this could have been one of them. That's all that I'm going to say. But the event itself was totally and completely awesome. You had over 80,000 Patriots out on the National Mall watching this event live. You had another few thousand on the lawn of the White House, most of which looked like were service members, members of the Marine Corps, members of the Army, members of all of the branches. And the atmosphere was just absolutely electric. I watched it on TV, and I could just feel the adrenaline and the excitement coming through as these thousands of people were just screaming and yelling and cheering on these fights. It was absolutely awesome. What I would have given to have been there in person. It would have been amazing. It would have been epic. I wish I could have gone. But alas, unfortunately, I was not able to. However, watching it on TV was awesome. And the fights themselves, I'm not a huge UFC fan. I haven't watched a ton of fights, but I've heard many people say that these were some of the best fights that they've seen. And I could see that for sure. You had Sugar Sean O'Malley going in and just knocking out a Canadian Muslim and telling Trump that he did it for Trump's birthday. It's absolutely amazing. And you had Justin Gaethje, who has apparently been chasing a title for years and years and years, all the years that he's been in the league, he's been in the UFC, and he finally gets it. He finally gets what he's been after. And the guy that he was fighting, I cannot pronounce his name. I'm not even going to try, so I'm sorry. But the guy who he was fighting just got absolutely pummeled. Go on X, look up the pictures of the before and after. It's absolutely insane. You had one fighter whose name escapes me at the moment, my apologies, but you had one fighter go out there and end his speech by saying Michelle Obama is a man. Now, I'm not going to confirm or deny whether or not I believe that to be true, but regardless, it was really, really funny. I laughed pretty hard when that happened. It was an amazing fight. And in the aftermath, of course, you had the leftists who were yelling and screaming about how this was an outrageous display. It was vile. It was gruesome. It shouldn't have happened. It was below the dignity of the White House. You had some out-of-touch boomers who were on the right, vaguely anyway, saying that this was a waste of money, that they couldn't believe that our taxpayer money was going to this, despite the fact that the UFC actually paid for every cent of it, including the Blue Angels flyover at the beginning. But they were complaining about the money. Some of them were complaining about the fact that it wasn't streamed for free, that you had to get a Paramount Plus subscription, which I'm sorry that the White House doesn't control the streaming rights of the UFC. Next time they do this, if they do this again, we'll make sure that the White House gets a copy of the media rights deal so that they can go in and alter it if they need to. It's just utterly ridiculous, some of the criticisms that you heard levied at this. And it made all of the people, especially on the left, come across as out of touch, crotchety, old, just geezers who absolutely do not know what fun is. And here's the thing. The reason that this was an awesome event outside of just the spectacle of it all was the fact that hours before you had Trump announcing that they had reached a potential peace deal with Iran, which we'll be getting into that later in the show. So you had that, and then you had this awesome display. I saw so many posts on X describing this as the most Roman thing America's ever done. You had the emperor sign a peace deal with the Persians and then retire to have a gladiator fight in the lawn of his palace. It was absolutely hilarious. But the reason that the left is so out of touch with this, and the reason that this actually was an amazing thing, is because it was quintessentially American in almost every aspect. Fighting sports of some kind have been popular in America for as long as America has existed. 250 years of this country has also equaled 250 years of some sort of fighting or dueling or something as a sport or popular recreation with the American people. But how could you have this at the White House? I don't know. Ask Teddy Roosevelt. Ask Teddy Roosevelt, who hosted several wrestling, boxing matches, and even a sumo match at the White House. Teddy Roosevelt, who also went partially blind in his, I believe, right eye because he participated in a wrestling match at the White House. These people are out of touch. They hate America, and they hate anything that makes America look cool, especially if that thing is masculine in nature. And this, of course, is very masculine. You had violence, but it was controlled violence being displayed in a competitive way. That's the very essential part of masculinity, the capability of being violent and having a competitive spirit. The left hates it. They hate it because they hate this country. But it's 2026. It's the big 2-6, 250 years of America being a country. This is the year of the Patriot. And we've seen all year through various scandals, no matter whether it was some of the blowback from the Epstein stuff that turned into conspiracy theories about the Epstein stuff that were completely unfounded, whether it was some of the reactions to what was going on over in the Middle East, which I had my disagreements with the war in Iran. I won't lie to you. I had my disagreements, but I still trusted Trump. I was still a patriot. And those who were patriots, they ended up on top in the end. Patriots are in control. This is the year of the Patriot. Patriots have always guided this country through its highs and its lows. Patriots have always been waiting in the wings when you get a bad president like Joe Biden, waiting to take back power, plotting, scheming, planning, getting ready to show the world that America is the greatest country on earth. And we have that going on right now as well. Right now, there are millions of foreigners in the country who are here traveling, visiting to see the World Cup. Now, I'm not a huge soccer fan. I actually very much dislike soccer, to be honest with you. But that being said, having an international sporting event like that in the United States is a really cool thing, and it gives us an opportunity to show off just how great this country is. And the social media reactions that you've been seeing from some of these foreigners just goes to show that. You have this guy named Freddie on Twitter, on X. He goes by Freddie. He's a German. He's a tourist traveling the country right now for the World Cup. And he is going all over. He's done a complete tour of the South. And almost every single X post, he's just bragging about how beautiful America is, how amazing America is. He went to a Buc-ee's. We love Buc-ee's. He went to a Buc-ee's, and he was just bragging about how cool Buc-ee's was. He went to a Bass Pro Shop and was bragging about how cool Bass Pro Shop is. Even these little things that you and I can sometimes take for granted, these foreigners are just completely mesmerized by. And a common refrain you keep hearing from them is that they were lied to or they were surprised by just how welcoming and how awesome America actually is. European state media is completely captured by the left, and all they ever do is trash America. But when they come over here and when they see the country and what's going on and how people actually are, they love it. You have a bunch of Scottish singing Country Roads at some bar. That is assimilation. They are already assimilated. They haven't even applied for citizenship, and they are already more assimilated to American culture than the Somalis in Minnesota who have been defrauding our people. I am an advocate for an immigration moratorium. I want to have an immigration moratorium for a couple of decades just to reset the clock, reset the culture, reset the temperature, and reset the system so that we can actually bring in some, not a lot, not mass migration, but some good people. And on my list of good people that I would absolutely bring in if the immigration moratorium were ended are these Scottish. People like that. People who come here, who love it, who see the value in our customs and our culture and our heritage, and want to become Americans and assimilate to American culture. In a word, become patriots. 2026 is the year of the Patriot. Patriots have never been in more control than they are right now. Patriotism is skyrocketing among the right people. The right people are despondent and disgusted. It is absolutely beautiful to see. The left is going to end up killing itself. We on the right, we need to put in work. We need to put in work to secure our elections, pass the Save America Act. We need to put in work to convince some of the middle ground of the country to come over to our side. We need to put in the work to clear the country of the both domestic and foreign threats, whether it's Antifa or Muslims or third world migrants. We need to put in some of that work. But at the same time, we can rest assured that the left is just going to end up killing itself. You look at the responses to these leftists who are out there trashing the UFC fight, who are trashing America on Flag Day, on Trump's birthday. People are done with the games and charades. People are proud to be an American again. And it's beautiful to see. And this is exactly the kind of thing that we needed going into our 250th birthday to juice up and energize the spirit of Americanism. If people could be patriotic in 1976, in the aftermath of the sham Watergate scandal and all the things that were going on there, people can be patriotic today. You have a duty to be a patriot, and I hope that you will fulfill it. Now, before we move on to anything else, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, DeusVoltLapelPens.com. Go to DeusVoltLapelPens.com and use my code ChristFamilyNation26 for 10% off of your order. DeusVoltLapelPens.com. All right, so we've got some details. I mentioned Trump said on Sunday that a deal had been reached, a memorandum of understanding had been reached with Iran. And supposedly, we have the full text, finally. Now, allegedly, this is the full text, allegedly as read by a senior U.S. official. I'm going to go by this point by point. I don't know if this is 100% accurate. I don't know if this is actually what the memorandum of understanding says, but there's been a lot of talk around it. We're going to go through it, and then we're going to discuss. So here are the points. First, the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran and their allies in the current war, by signing this MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, declare the immediate and permanent termination of military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon, and undertake from now on not to initiate any war or any military operation against each other, and to refrain from the threat or use of force against each other, and ensuring the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Lebanon. The final deal will confirm the permanent termination of the war on all fronts, including in Lebanon, and other provisions of this paragraph. Okay, seems pretty simple. 2. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran undertake to respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and to refrain from interfering in each other's internal affairs. It seems like a little bit of a give to Iran. Okay, you know what? We said some things during the course of this war about the people need to rise up. Comments were made by various American politicians like Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham about regime change. You had Mark Levin advocating for regime change. This is just an assurance. We're not going to try and initiate that while we're trying to negotiate this peace deal, which this is not the final peace deal, and we're going to get to that in a second. 3. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran commit to negotiating and achieving the final deal in a maximum of 60 days, extendable by mutual consent. So this isn't the final product. This isn't the final deal. That's where I think a lot of people have some misunderstanding. Some people have read through this and see it as a capitulation. I don't think it is, and we're going to discuss that in a moment. This isn't the final product. This isn't the final deal. And Trump said at the G7 summit this week that if he doesn't like the deal, he can go back to bombing Iran. Now, I don't think he wants to. I think that he wants to not do that at all if possible. But he's using a threat of force that he can and has shown he will back up in order to put Iran in its place. So this isn't the final deal. This is just a memorandum of understanding while we negotiate the final deal. Immediately upon the signing of this MOU, the United States of America will begin the removal of its naval blockade and any disturbances or impediments against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and will fully end the naval blockade within 30 days. During this period, the traffic of vessels will be in proportion to the numbers of pre-war traffic being restored by the Islamic Republic of Iran. The United States of America further undertakes to remove its forces from the proximity of the Islamic Republic of Iran within 30 days after the final deal. So just saying, we're going to get our military out of here, we're going to remove it from the area, and we're going to leave you guys alone. Common peace deal stuff. Upon the signing of this MOU, the Islamic Republic of Iran will make... Well, actually, before we move on, it's possible. I'm just speculating, but it's possible that this fourth point could be used as a justification in the future for us to finally remove ourselves from the Middle East. Something I think that the majority of us, me certainly, would like to see. It's just speculation. I don't know. I'm just speculating as I read this, but on that point anyway, but maybe. Number 5. Upon the signing of this MOU, the Islamic Republic of Iran will make arrangements using its best efforts for the safe passage of commercial vessels with no charge for 60 days only from the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman, and vice versa. The traffic of command vessels will immediately start, and considering the need for removal, the technical and military obstacles in demining by the Islamic Republic of Iran will be instated within 30 days. The Islamic Republic of Iran will conduct dialogue with the Sultanate of Oman to define the future administration and maritime services in the Strait of Hormuz, in discussion with other Persian Gulf littoral states, in lines with the applicable international law and the sovereign rights of coastal states of the Strait of Hormuz. So just saying that Iran and other Gulf allies, other Middle Eastern countries along the Strait of Hormuz are going to mutually decide its future. Iran's not going to be in control of it completely. Oman, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, they're not going to be in control of it completely. It's going to be a joint effort, which I think is the best move. You want to have everybody in the region friendly with each other, and you want to have everybody having a say in how this is going to be operated. And I don't think it's going to look much different than it did before the war. Some people are upset that it's not the United States doing it. Trump didn't want that. Nobody wanted that. Nobody wanted the United States controlling the strait. And if you did, you're crazy. That's my point. Number 6, the United States of America undertakes with regional partners to develop an definitive, mutually agreed upon plan with at least $300 billion for the reconstruction and economic development of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The mechanism for the implementation of this plan will be finalized as part of a final deal within 60 days. All required licenses, waivers, and permissions needed for the relevant financial transactions will be granted by the United States of America. Now, this was one of the points that had a lot of people up in arms. You had some people saying that we, the United States, was giving them $300 billion and was trying to say, how is this any different than the deal given by Obama? We're not using taxpayer money. We're letting the Gulf allies, if Iran decides to play ball and be nice, invest into the country, and we're going to be part of that planning process and all of that. But we're not the ones who are going in and saying, here's some money, use it responsibly. As detailed in other parts of this deal that we'll get to, this entire thing is going to be based on conditions. If Iran meets certain conditions, then they will be allowed economic development. Now, we can debate and discuss and go back and forth on whether or not we want the current government of Iran to be the ones to receive this money. And I know a lot of people don't trust Iran farther than they can throw, which I think, given the last 47 years of history, is fair. But if they don't play ball, then we are under no obligation to give them anything. If they don't play ball, then we can go back to striking them if we need to. I don't want that to happen, but it's on the table. And I think the Iranians, at least the moderates in government who are the ones negotiating this, understand it. Now, I know what some people are going to say, no Muslim is a moderate, and I get you. I feel you. We're going to talk about some of that later. 7, the United States of America undertakes to terminate all types of sanctions against the Islamic Republic of Iran, including the United Nations Security Council resolutions, IAEA Board of Governors resolutions, and all unilateral U.S. sanctions, primary and secondary, in an agreed-upon schedule as part of the final deal. The Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States of America acknowledge the critical importance of the sanctions termination issue above mentioned and express their intentions to immediately address these issues in negotiations in order to achieve mutual agreement upon them. So again, if Iran plays ball, they'll get some sanctions relief. Key words here: in an agreed upon schedule. They have to meet conditions. They have to actually abide by the terms of whatever the final deal is. That should be pretty simple. If they abide, sanctions relief. If they don't abide, sanctions stay. If they abide for a time, get the relief, and then start going back on their promises, sanctions come back. It's pretty simple. And yet people are trying to act as if this is some sort of... We'll talk about it in a second. Let me get through the rest of this. 8, the Islamic Republic of Iran reaffirms that it shall not procure or develop nuclear weapons. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran have agreed to resolve the disposition of stockpiled enriched material pursuant to a mechanism that will be mutually agreed upon in accordance with the schedule mentioned in paragraph 7, with the minimum methodology to be down blending on site under the supervision of the IAEA. The two parties also agree to discuss the issue of enrichment and other mutually agreed matters related to the Islamic Republic of Iran's nuclear needs based on a satisfactory framework being agreed upon in the final deal. The final deal will confirm the provisions of this paragraph. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran acknowledge the critical importance of the nuclear issues mentioned above and express their intention to immediately address these issues in the negotiations in order to achieve mutual agreement on them. So Iran can't get a nuclear weapon, which has been the entire thing that these bombings, this war, has been about. Trump has said it from the beginning. You've had neocons in DC try to make this about regime change. You had the retard right trying to make this about Israel and the Jews. But the whole thing has been, Trump has been saying for over a decade now, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. That's been the whole thing. So this is a major provision in the deal. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. Number 10. How many more? Okay, so we're almost through this. Number 10, the United States of America undertakes that immediately upon the signing of this MOU and until the termination of sanctions, the U.S. Department of Treasury shall issue waivers for the export of Iranian crude oil, petroleum products, and derivatives, and all associated services, including banking transactions, insurances, transportation, etc. As much as some of you may want to, you can't stop Iran from trying to sell oil. If we tried to do that, we'd just end up in the war again. I think this is just a way of saying, sell oil, do it under our watch, don't be stupid. That's how I interpret this. Number 11, the United States of America undertakes to make fully available for use the frozen or restricted funds and assets of the United States or the Islamic Republic of Iran upon the implementation of the MOU. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran will mutually agree on the procedures related to the release of these funds during negotiations. Such funds, whether retained in the original account or transferred, shall be made fully usable for payment to any ultimate beneficiary designated by the Central Bank of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The United States undertakes to issue all necessary licenses and authorizations accordingly. So basically, if they had assets over here, which no foreign country should, but that's a different discussion for a different day, we're just going to unfreeze their assets. That's part of a war negotiation. You freeze assets during the war, you unfreeze them after. Pretty simple. A lot of people are making big deals out of this stuff, but it's all just pretty simple. I'm just going to read the last three together. Number 12, the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran agree that an executive mechanism will be established to monitor the successful implementation of this MOU and the future compliance of the final deal. Number 13, after the signing of this MOU and subject to the beginning of the implementation of paragraphs 1, 4, 5, 10, and 11, and the continuing implementation of these measures, the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran will start negotiations regarding the final deal exclusively on other paragraphs. And number 14, the final deal will be endorsed by a binding UN Security Council resolution. So that's it. That is the details of the deal with Iran, which, once again, this is not the final product. This is a memorandum of understanding. This is not the final deal. This is just the terms which will be appropriated immediately and the terms which will be seen later on down the line. But you have both Israel-obsessed factions of the right, the hyper-Zionist. If you're a Zionist, like a moderate Zionist, okay, no problem with you. We can disagree. But the hyper-Zionists who think Israel can do no wrong, and the retard right who thinks that Israel is the sole arbiter of every bad thing that's ever happened and literally controls every single aspect of our government, up and including when President Trump goes to bed, both sides of this debate, the both fringe extremes of this debate, are both upset about this. You have the Nick Fuentes crowd saying that Iran won this whole debacle. And ironically, you also have the Mark Levin crowd saying the same thing. Mark Levin and Nick Fuentes are acting as if they're in agreement here. Iran won. We lost. Israel lost. Maybe, just maybe, it's more nuanced and complicated than they're either pretending or actually believe that it is. And maybe, just maybe, Israel actually doesn't control everything about the United States, because Israel was pretty mad about this as well. Over the weekend, you saw a lot of news stories, and a lot of people in Israel claiming that the United States and Trump had betrayed them by signing this agreement. It's utterly ridiculous. But as I've said in the past, I will say again, the hyper-Zionist and the retard right need each other. They are two wings on the same bird. They're both obsessed with Israel to the extent that they almost see Israel as more important than the United States, the country that they inhabit. They're both obsessed with Israel. They both believe that this was a bad deal for Israel and the United States, and it was a bad deal for Israel, but I think it was a okay deal for the United States. And they both believe Iran won. The hyper-Zionists need the retard right in order to have the anti-Semites that they can use as a cudgel to attack good people like J.D. Vance, good people like many of you watching this program, and the retard right needs the hyper-Zionist so that they can point to something and say, see, Israel has ultimate control. Israel is controlling things. Israel is doing this. Israel's doing that. Da 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 da. They need each other. They absolutely need each other. Absolutely need each other. Absolutely need each other. You can't have the retard right without these hyper-Zionists, and you can't have the hyper-Zionists without the retard right. Most of us patriots who are in the middle, some of which disagree on what extent the relationship between the United States and Israel should be, but us patriots who are in the middle, who have trusted Trump through this whole process, always come out on top. Now, is this memorandum of understanding perfect? No. Is the final deal going to be perfect? No. There's never going to be a perfect deal because you have to negotiate. You have to give and take some. Both sides need to get a little bit of what they want. And in this case, both sides got a little bit of what they want. It is pretty simple. The people who act as if this is some huge capitulation to Iran and that we've lost this war and it was all for naught, what else did you want? Did you want a nuke over Tehran? Is that what you wanted? If so, you agree with Lindsey Graham and Mark Levin. Did you want troops on the ground in Tehran for 20 more years? 1,000 troops in Iran trying to occupy the country? You want Afghanistan 2.0, just worse this time? I don't want that. I wanted this to end as soon as it possibly could. And I believe we got what we wanted. I am okay with this peace deal. I'm okay with this thing ending. And if Trump needs to start bombing again, I don't want that to happen, but it is certainly on the table. And I expect Trump will make that clear to the Iranians and will absolutely follow through on a promise to start the bombing again if he has to. Just trust the process, trust the president, realize that we are all passenger quarterbacks, we're all Monday morning quarterbacks out here saying, well, he should have done this. Well, he should have done that. Well, actually, this means that we don't have the same amount of information as Trump does. We don't. Maybe that angers you. Maybe you want that information. If you do, go join the CIA. Go do something for your country other than just complaining online. I've got some things that I'm working on, some projects that I will announce in the future that I'm actually doing more than most of the people complaining online are. Yes, I come on here, I yap into my microphone for 40 minutes to an hour and talk about politics, and then I leave. But I leave to go do productive stuff in the real world, which cannot be said for some of the members of the retard right and some of the members of the hyper-Zionist class. It just can't. I think I've said enough on this topic. We're going to move on. Because if I keep speaking, it's just going to make me angry at these people. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. So we're going to move on here, and we're going to discuss a little bit about this new report that came out in the UK. Rupert Lowe, he's an MP in Parliament in the UK. He is the leader of a new political party over there called Restore Britain, has put out what he calls the Gang Rape Inquiry. Now, this thing is several hundred pages long. I unfortunately have not had a chance to go through and read all of it, but I've gotten a good summary of it. And basically, what it has revealed is that over the course of the last 20 or so years, 250,000 or more white, young British girls have been systematically raped, abused, trafficked, forced into forced marriages, and in some cases, forced to convert their religion by primarily 85 to 89% Pakistani Muslim men. This should be front page headline news all across the globe, but our media institutions are unfortunately captured, apparently including some conservative media institutions, and they have not spoken about this at all. They have not touched this subject. It's absolutely horrifying, absolutely disgusting. But the reason why is because, as you'll see, at least in the UK, all of this was done with the knowing and, in some cases, approval of British government leaders. In some cases, you had the police returning the victims to the perpetrators, knowing what the victims told them. All because they wanted to import more of these people into their country. All because they did not want to be seen as racist. They wanted to be seen as celebrating multiculturalism. They wanted to be celebrated for celebrating diversity. They allowed 250,000 young girls to be absolutely abused and raped by Pakistani men, all in the name of diversity. And if it's that bad in Britain, imagine what's going on in the United States that we do not know about. Just imagine for a moment. I'm sure it's awful. I can't imagine it. We need to do an immediate investigation over here and figure out what is going on over here with the migrants. We know about the fraud. We know about the billions of dollars in fraud all across the country. But are our people being abused? We need answers, and we need them now. All across the West, we are experiencing the worst mass migration crisis in history. All of it put in place by elites and liberal leaders all across the West who want cultural enrichment, they say. Also, some corporations can save some money on their bottom line by hiring cheap labor. And so the leftists in power can replace the native population with a demographic that will be totally subservient to them. It needs to end. It needs to end immediately. All of the migrants who committed these heinous crimes need to be publicly executed. To send a message, publicly executed. All of the leaders who facilitated this and were complicit in it need to, at the very least, lose their jobs. They need to lose their seat in government. And maybe, in some cases, some extreme cases, possibly be publicly executed for treason as well. And the entire West needs to collectively band together and rid ourselves of this menace. We need remigration. We need to send all of these third worlders home. All of them. The few, and I mean few, who actually assimilate, maybe they can stay, but the cultural compatibility between the West and many of these third world countries is literally zero. So I don't even think you can find anyone who actually assimilated. We need to send them all home, and we need to completely ban migration from the third world. In the United States, we need a total immigration moratorium for at least a couple of decades. And after that moratorium is over, we need to open up to a select few countries that are culturally compatible and have proven that they're culturally compatible. Some European countries, probably most. Japan. I love the Japanese people. I think that they are actually very culturally compatible with us. Maybe South Korea, but beyond that, very short list. And any third world country, complete ban on migration from that region. We don't need it. It hasn't worked. It hasn't been helpful. It has actually been detrimental. We can do without. Justice needs to come to the British Isles. The British people need to do something about this. And while we were on the topic of military interventions earlier, I doubt it would happen, but if Trump decided he wanted to do a little military intervention in the UK, do a little regime change in the UK, I think I would support that, especially after this awful report has come to light. I think I would support that. I'm going to briefly touch on one more topic that I really don't want to talk about, but I addressed a little bit the other day, and I think still warrants some comment, even though I said I was done talking about it. This will be the last time I actually talk about it. New Christendom Press in Ogden, Utah hosted a conference over the weekend that drew some controversy because one of the vendors at the conference was a outlet called Antelope Hill Publishing. Now, part of what Antelope Hill does is that they publish primary source material from the 20th century, a lot of Nazi German material in English for readers to read. Now, on the surface, I have no problem with this material being published. I think in order to gain a full understanding of history, we should be able to read the primary sources from both sides of any conflict. Both sides of any conflict. But the problem with Antelope Hill is that many of the people associated with them have outwardly advocated for National Socialism in the United States. I disagree with that. I'll expand more on that in a moment. But also one of the points of controversy was that they were handing out a flyer that contained a list of, quote, pro-white businesses, which included things like tarot cards and pornographic material, or at least a men's magazine that had questionable material in it. Now, Eric Kahn and Brian Save, who are both leaders at New Christendom Press, Eric has been on this podcast before, addressed this, recognized that they made a little bit of a mistake here, and what their explanation was is that they were familiar on the surface with Antelope Hill, didn't know a ton about the company, that they were a small outfit putting together a pretty large conference, and that they took full accountability for just not doing enough research, and that also, if they had known about this flyer, they would have immediately shut it down during the conference. They wouldn't have allowed this flyer to be distributed, and that they're going to be more careful in the future picking their vendors. Reasonable response. But there are some on two different sides of this issue. Some who are saying that we need National Socialism, we need a Protestant Hitler to lead this country. Others saying that you shouldn't have any association with these people at all, and that if you try and deflect and say that hunting Nazis is bad while all these other things are going on, then you're a bad person. I think both sides need to calm down just a little bit. And let's have a reasonable discussion about this. First off, I've read many primary sources from history. I've done a ton of research and a ton of reading into World War II. And the truth about World War II is that Hitler and the Germans during this time period were not good people, but at the same time, were not this cartoonish supervillain that has become the foundational myth of modern leftism. They were bad. Their actions led to the slaughter of millions of people during the war. I don't like National Socialism. I think it's a bad ideology. I think that it is out of step with our American heritage and history, and is a product of the 20th century, and most of the things that came out of the 20th century are products of the de-Christianization of the West and the just utter insanity going on during that period. So I don't want anything to do with the promotion of some sort of national socialist movement in the United States. I think that's a bad idea. On the other hand, I understand where some of these people are coming from. We just talked about a report showing that leaders in the UK were complicit in allowing in millions of Muslim Pakistanis who then went on to systematically rape 250,000 British girls. When you have conditions like that, and you think that nothing else is working, I can understand the draw of National Socialism. Now, I disagree with you. I don't think that's the answer. But I think that if we did a little less automatic denouncing and a little more seeking for understanding, we might actually be able to reach these people, understand their concerns, and maybe dissuade them from the path that they're going down. Because again, I think National Socialism, Nazi ideology, is bad. And I want to dissuade people from going down that path. And how we do that is by showing them that their concerns are legitimate. Look at the UK, and that we can actually offer solutions to those problems that don't include a totalitarian government that will end up disrespecting Christians alongside all of these foreigners. It was Hitler that allowed Christian Poland to fall into the hands of the Bolsheviks. Don't forget that. Hitler was very effective at using Christianity in his public speeches because it was a primarily Christian country in Germany. However, you read some of his private writings and it appears clear he was not really a fan of Christianity. Do I think that you can be a National Socialist and a Christian? Yes, because it's a political ideology. However, I don't think it's a good one, and I don't think that it's something that we should be promoting, especially not in the United States. So when it comes to this whole controversy, I think all of us just need to take a step back, take a deep breath, and actually engage in a dialogue with one another. Because what is going on right now, if you're someone who appreciates this whole Christian nationalist project, who appreciates this whole thing that's going on, it's threatening to tear all of us apart. And at the same time, also, our enemies on the left are going to label us Nazis and racist and all of this anyway for trying to save our country. That doesn't mean we should give them more ammunition. I certainly don't think we should give them any more ammunition. But we shouldn't be concerned about the labels that are going to be thrown at us. We should be concerned about implementing good ideas, which in my opinion means rejection of National Socialism, but we should be concerned about implementing good ideas that will actually make this country great again and give our children and their children an inheritance and a heritage and a future that they can believe in. So that's where we're going to leave it for tonight. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit like, share this episode with your friends, and make sure if you're listening on Spotify, give us a 5-star review. Go follow me on X at Jesse Hughes NC, and go check out our sponsor, DeusVoltLapelPens.com for awesome lapel pens, and use my code ChristFamilyNation26 for 10% off your order. God loves you and so do I. Thank you and have a great night.